Buy back and exit again. Okay, there's lots of private equity money out there right now. All right? Okay, so...
How much negotiating power do you have as a business owner with a private equity firm? I guess that's the thing for me.
Not nearly as much as a strategic buyer.
So like with an investment banker, we get calls all the time from private equity, and they're kind of started looking at investment bankers because the private equity, it just seems like we're going to get our assets handed to us.
But the still thing, if you go with an investment banker, they'll do their own valuation. My suggestion is knowledge is power, and you give them more knowledge. Okay? All right, now when to sell. This has only happened about a dozen times. People have asked me about this. So I'm going to give you an actual quantitative way of when to sell and when to buy and how much money. Okay, so if we take a company life cycle, it looks like a bell curve, all right? Now, if you're adding new products, you can extend that out, right? Okay, let's say you're here and you want to sell. How much money do you need to get in the sale? Well, 100 million is plenty, okay? Nobody can use 100 million. But let's figure this out. Let's do 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years. 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. Present value, all of those cash flows back. So you're going to have 9 numbers. All right? You can figure the break even for the offer that they're offering you versus staying in the business. Does this make sense to anybody? So if I stay in the business, I'm going to get so much cash flow every year for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years under a declining, under a flat, under a growth. So you can get 9 numbers of how much money you'd get in present value terms if you stayed in the business. Does this make sense? Are you following what I'm saying? I just did this for one of my CEOs. His break even for the offer he got with the cash flow he was doing was 6 years. Okay? So you can calculate what the break even is for this offer. If it declined, flat, or grew, you can see how much money you need versus staying in the business and just collecting your cash. Does that make sense to everybody? So we did this, and he had a 6-year payback, and he's only 48. And he decided that he'd rather stick around and just get the cash flow. Now, if that went up to 15 years, he would have exited. If his break even of his cash flow was 15 years to break even to the offer he got, he would have exited. So I'm giving you a quantitative way to determine the price that you need to exit. Does that make sense? Yeah, I might use less than the company risk because I'm investing the money and so forth, so maybe I'd use a 10% or something like that. But I would still do analysis to determine that. But you maybe wouldn't be doing, the risk of the business is still 25. But the risk of the cash you get is going to be less, right? Because you got the money. But I'm just giving you a quantitative way to say, okay, if I get this much, how many years would I have to work to get the same dollars? You understand what I'm telling you? Okay, it gives you a break even for the amount that you're asking for. All right. Okay. What do we not want to do? Whose question was that?
Real quick to the analysis you were just doing, how much do you factor in the tax consequences?
Yeah, that has to be after tax. Everything has to be after tax. Yeah, no, it has to be totally after tax. Yeah, capital gains versus whatever, whether you're reinvesting in a 401k or, I mean, it has to be an after-tax analysis. Otherwise, you got apples and bananas that you're comparing. Okay? Who did the not do? You wanted to know what not to do when. What were you asking me? What are things you don't want to do?
Right.
When? In a merger, in operations, or in recreation, or what do you want me not to answer? Don't break your leg, whatever. Don't break your back. Don't go snowboarding out in Utah at age 50.
No, I think you've covered a number of what you don't want to do.
Okay, you don't want to take an EBITDA multiplier from the web. right? Knowledge is power. You want to consider synergies, and you want to consider where your values are in the group so that you can negotiate to the highest value. You want to build a productivity pyramid, an 80-20 customer service, a rifle versus shotgun. Those are things that are going to, and systems. That'll take your business to the next level, right? What you don't want to do if you're emotionally involved is negotiate. It maybe is worth hiring somebody who you give the band of the numbers that you want and the reasoning behind it, so knowledge is power, and then let them negotiate. Because if you become emotionally involved, you may take an offer that's lower than you could have got if somebody focused on not emotion. Does that make sense? So if you're a good negotiator, then I'd do it. If negotiation turns into difficulty for you, then I'd get somebody to do my negotiation. Make sense? Okay? Okay, goodwill. Goodwill has two definitions. Who can define what goodwill is?